Now, this might ruffle a few feathers, but here goes. Most people will tell you that in order to immerse yourself and integrate fully into your new life in Spain, it requires 0 to 100 full immersion, and that's it. Well, I don't tend to agree with it. And as we go through the course of this episode, we're going to discuss just why I feel like that and why I feel that it's actually easy just to gradually immerse yourself into your new life in Spain. Lots of people feel the pressure when they hear full immersion. They feel pressure to be fluent in their new language. They feel pressure to immediately have set up a new routine before they move, or have a community of friends that they can immediately integrate in and mix with. But this isn't always the case. And that's what we're going to discuss in this episode today. Now, I can't tell you the amount of times that I've heard people say that they're terrified of sitting in a doctor's surgery, of going to meetings in kids' schools, of sitting in restaurants and ordering because they feel embarrassed that they don't speak the language fluently, or they haven't immersed themselves enough to be able to navigate what's going on in that situation. I've felt this pressure myself. In my early days in Spain, I would really avoid kids' parties because I felt like I only had 10 to 15 sentences of Spanish to be able to help me actually converse. And once those 10 or 15 sentences were used up, I didn't know what to say. So I would approach these situations feeling a lot of pressure, feeling a lot of anxiety in my stomach, and embarrassed about the fact that in my first months and even years in the country, I wasn't fluent enough to be able to navigate these situations in a way that feels comfortable to me. And I'm not alone feeling like that. Lots of our clients have communicated to me they've felt the same, and lots of people that I have socialized with or mixed with during the course of my journey in Spain have also felt the same. Now, in this episode, I'm going to share with you 5 things that can help you build confidence, help you not feel that pressure in those early stages. The exact steps to give you confidence and help you cope and make day-to-day life in your new country all that little bit easier. I don't want you to let the language barrier impact you, so stick with me, and by the end of this episode, you'll be feeling great with all of the steps that you need to help you survive those early weeks, months, years in your new country. So, something I want to talk about, the language. So why does this question come up all of the time? Why is it a fear for people? Okay, it's natural. You're moving to a country where the language is different, but why are people so afraid of not speaking the language? And why are they so embarrassed that they're not fluent in a new language as quickly maybe as they expect or anticipate? I guess what I'm trying to say is, why is there so much pressure around this topic? Let's talk about that for a minute. I personally think it's because as human beings, we want to be able to communicate. We want to be able to articulate ourselves. We want to be able to explain what's happening in our lives. And I think that when people feel that they don't have the language skills to survive in situations like going to a school meeting as a parent, or mixing with other mums in the schoolyard, or going to the doctor's surgery and not being able to explain what you're suffering from or why you're there in the first place. This, in my experience, instills so much fear in people. Simple things like going for a coffee with somebody and just not knowing what to say or how to, portray your order in a way that you want when you go to a restaurant. So these situations really spark fear and anxiety and the fear of the unknown in people. But here's the thing, here's what a lot of people don't actually realize. It does not have to be this hard. And in this situation, I honestly feel that this is a prime topic where we really, really get in our own way. There is so much support available. There are so much support systems available. There are hundreds of people who live happily in Spain along the Costa del Sol because it's such a dynamic area without being fluent in Spanish. Now, how do they survive over here? How have they managed to integrate? Well, I'm here today to tell you it's not just luck. They've invested in systems, or they've built in their life in a way that they're able to survive, to make their life easier without feeling this pressure of not speaking the language fluently. So let's get into it. The 5 things that are going to make your life easier in Spain if you don't speak the language, and especially if you don't speak it fluently. We're going to dive in. These are the support mechanisms that are going to make your life easier and absolutely give you confidence in those early days, weeks, months, or even years. Some people never manage to get the language fluently to a level. You know, sometimes I struggle with the language skills myself, and that's okay. But what do you do if that's the case? Are you going to give up on your move and return back home? No. You need to have systems, you need to have mechanisms, you need to have a strategy that's going to help to support you as you integrate and live in your new country. The first thing that I would absolutely say that you should think about as a coping strategy, a survival mechanism, a hack if we call it that, but I don't even think that's the right word for this, is explore private health insurance. Why? Your health is one of those things that you never want to gamble with. Irrelevant of where you're living or residing in the world, you do not want to gamble with your health. And I know so many people worry about their health and navigating the healthcare system when they move to the Costa del Sol for the first time. How am I going to explain myself to a doctor if I don't speak Spanish? How am I going to explain what's really going on? How am I going to ensure that I get the correct treatment for me? Now, here's the good news. Most private doctors speak English. So when you have private health insurance, you can choose an English-speaking doctor, okay? You can choose to go to specialists or hospitals where English is spoken, and you can receive your treatment in English. That means when something is personal or urgent to you, you can express yourself more clearly in English. You'll feel heard, you'll feel safe, and you'll be able to explain exactly what's going on for you. It's a massive and a huge relief for people. Now, in the public system, which is also excellent, here in Benalmádena, you can use the services of a translator in the majority of the health centres. This is an amazing tool, but sometimes people don't always feel comfortable using a stranger who's not familiar to them to translate their health concerns. So you can avoid all that by choosing to proceed with private health insurance. And as I've mentioned before in our episodes that talk specifically around healthcare in Spain, you will be really surprised at the cost, in a good way, the affordability compared to what you're probably paying in your home country right now if you do have a private health insurance policy. So step 1, private health insurance. Definitely, I would recommend that you check this out for that peace of mind, that ease of mind to be able to communicate any healthcare challenges in English while you're immersing yourself in your new country. Number 2, private schools or international schools specifically. So if you've got children, one of the biggest worries is integrating them into a public school system. The education is taught in Spanish. Many parents who are moving to the Costa del Sol, particularly with kids that are a little bit older, I would say, maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 upwards, they worry, will they be able to integrate their kids into Spanish public school successfully because their children don't speak the language well or they don't speak the language well. And it can become a huge headache for people. Now, I would say if this is a worry and a concern for you, if your children are of an age where you feel that it's not fair to them to put them into Spanish public school because they don't speak the language, go and investigate and check out the international schools in the area. In Benalmádena, there are some incredible options of various different international schools that follow different curriculums. This will really ease some of the pressure that parents feel. Because let's be honest, you're going to be carrying a lot of stress anyway as you're, adjusting to life in your new country. Your kids are probably going to be missing friends. They're going to be missing their old routines. They're going to be missing their old hobbies. So putting them into an environment where they need to speak Spanish, this may just antagonize and cause more stress than you maybe could avoid. Okay, so I would say if this is a worry for you, check out international schools in your area. If you are thinking, I'm going to do that, absolutely, please go after this episode and look at our video all around the schools in Benalmádena, where we explore the different international schools in the area and also the different education options when you move to the Costa del Sol. This is definitely one for you. So step number 2, survival tip number 2, check out international schools in your area because the education language is going to be conducted in English, okay? When parents come to us when they're buying a home and they're relocating their families over to the Costa del Sol, this is an area we do spend time on. And I share a lot of my own experience with this from integrating my own kids into Spanish life, but also some of the experiences of our clients. And it's very, very important to ask yourself some key questions when you're considering the right school for your kids, but also the right school for your family. So the age of your child, critical. Why? If your child's a little bit older, it's going to be more difficult for them to integrate into a school where Spanish is the key language, where the education is spoken in Spanish. You also want to ask yourself, what are your long-term plans in Spain? Because if you're moving on from Spain in a few years, I would really encourage you to explore an international curriculum, because by doing this, you will be able to then find a school that matches the curriculum when you move on. Now, something else to consider that I'd really encourage you to think about is, what time do you have available right now? Are you going straight into building a career and work commitments in Spain? Because if yes, you may not necessarily have time to support your child or children with the language challenge, okay? So, you need to consider that as well in terms of what time and resources do you have available to support that integration. So if you're time sensitive, I would say that that's another reason to consider international schools, okay? If your kids are young enough, absolutely, public school all the way. We moved to Spain when our kids were very young. Immediately, it was never really a discussion topic. It was straight into Spanish public school because they were young enough, they were little sponges, and they were able to learn the language. They were 4 and 1, okay? But if your child is a little bit older or your children are a little bit older, you may want to look at things a little bit differently. And also, if you're a family that has more than 1 or 2 children, the same education option may not be right for all kids, okay? Some kids may immediately adjust to public school and some may need private school. But you as a family will sit down together and discuss what options are best for you. Number 3, a gestor. And you're probably going to be saying, a gestor? What's that? Okay, so paperwork is where language barriers really get tough. Forms to be filled out at the town hall, tax documents, car registrations, they're all in Spanish, okay? And sometimes people can start to feel a lot of stress when it comes to, registering at the town hall to get their empadronamiento, which you need to register your children in public school, okay? So people can find these situations quite overwhelming. They might need to get a digital certificate, for example, in order to, support themselves with some of their tax records when they hit Spain. Now, if you feel comfortable navigating online processes and you're comfortable dealing with forms and bureaucracy in a different language, absolutely go for it. But if you're not, I would say look at hiring the services of a gestor to be able to support you definitely with things like taxes and keeping your tax returns right. But also look at the services of somebody like a relocation consultant if you need to complete paperwork for your family to get registrations done for schools or for hobbies or for football clubs. All of these things take time in the beginning, and if you're very, very focused on settling into a new country, doing this alone might just cause you that little bit more stress. So don't go at it alone. Look at hiring a gestor if you want to stay on top of your tax returns, and maybe look at a relocation consultant to help you with paperwork that you might need for you and your family. So we've got 2 tips combined into one there. Gestor for keeping your taxes right and keeping everything in order. And number 4, a relocation consultant for paperwork for your family. Now, a relocation consultant is not just only going to help you with paperwork for your family. If you're from outside of the EU, if you're from the UK, Canada, America, anywhere outside of the EU, you're going to need to explore the topic of a visa. Now, if you've been following us for a while, you'll know that some people find these topics quite complex and they really don't want to go at this alone. Now, I would agree because thankfully I don't have this challenge. I'm from a country within the EU, but if you are from outside of the EU and you are exploring visas, hire a relocation consultant to help you. Going at this alone can be tough, it can be stressful, it can be tedious. They know the process. They will ensure that you don't miss something important. That's what you're paying them for. So a relocation consultant really takes that stress away. They guide you through the whole process in English, explaining each step. Yes, it's an investment, I get it. An investment that might be challenging at a time where things are already expensive, but it's a good investment. It will ensure that you stay on the right track and that nothing gets lost in translation. You get all of your paperwork done correctly, especially with critical topics like visas. Okay, number 5, community. Building a community in your new country. So what would I suggest here? Try intercambio groups. What's this? What's this, you say to me? So often people fear that without Spanish, they'll always feel like outsiders. But belonging isn't about grammar, it's about showing up. So joining an intercambio or a language exchange group or a local expat community, it really gives you connection and will help you learn Spanish little by little. Locals practice their English in intercambio groups and you get to practice Spanish, so it's a win-win, and you also get to see friendships grow, relationships grow. You'll get to see familiar faces that you can have a coffee with week on week, but you'll also get to learn what's happening in your local area, especially when it comes to things like what activities are going on for me and my family. Maybe you want to join a sports club or have a recreational hobby. Well, in these intercambio groups, you may actually find somebody who can accompany you and they'll tell you all about their own experience. So even if your Spanish is broken, it's not important. You're going to be part of something. You're going to go from a visitor to a neighbour, and that's when your Spanish will really start to adjust because you're going to start to relax. So there you have it. There's my top 5 survival strategies when it comes to moving to the Costa del Sol without speaking the language. It doesn't require full immersion. It requires you to have hacks. It requires you to have survival strategies. It requires you to think ahead about services that you can maybe engage with that's going to make your life easier. Now look, I've seen both sides of the coin here. I've seen families, couples, individuals that have gone at it alone and have managed to do it well. But my call out here is that they've typically had the time to do it. So maybe if it's a couple, for example, one person may have the skills and the time to take ownership of the paperwork project, if we call it that. Or in the family, there may be one person that has the time to take hold of the integration project and the immersion project and keeps everybody guided the right way. Okay? And I've seen in these environments when people have gone at it alone, but there's like a dedicated leader within the family, they can do it pretty well because somebody's guiding the ship, okay? So it isn't impossible. However, I have also seen it go terribly wrong for people where they have not had the time. Some challenges have occurred in their move, which has eaten into their time. And they have required some extra support. They have needed some extra assistance to get them from A to Z. And that's why these survival strategies, these support systems, these services out there, these professional services that are out there for you to engage with, that's when they're critically important and they're going to support you to make your life a lot easier. A hell of a lot easier, by the way. Now, something I want to give some space to. There's a myth that I hear all the time that you must be fluent before you move. Now, that's simply not true. Spanish absolutely helps. It absolutely does. And you'll definitely want to learn it if your intention is to stay here long term or even short term. You're going to want to learn it if your plan is to spend some time here. But fluency at the start is not a prerequisite for moving. I certainly wasn't fluent in Spanish. I had no more than a handful of sentences to help me get by, okay? But I had determination and I had a big dream, okay? And if you're thinking the same, I need to have Spanish before I move, let me repeat myself. It's not a prerequisite. You don't need to be fluent before you start to think about your move. What you actually need is courage, you need some structure, you need a plan, and you need some support. So belonging in Spain and integrating, it doesn't come from perfect Spanish. It comes from effort and putting yourself out there. It comes from a willingness to connect with others and build relationships. I tell people this story all of the time when I think back of our early days in Spain, which were excellent by all means, but we were busy. We were a young family in the early stages of moving to a new country. Now, how did we structure our time at the start? So the kids had to be integrated into school, and I had immediately secured a pretty good job. So me and Warner decided as a family at that point that in those early weeks and months that my priority was to get integrated into that job and start performing, because we can't live on bricks and mortar. We needed to have a good income coming in. And he was going to support more with integrating the kids into schools and hobbies, helping us get all of our paperwork and everything done in the beginning and getting it done well. And we did hire some support services to help us to get our paperwork done correctly at the start. Now, when he felt that those kind of early milestones were done, he started then to think about his own career and what his priorities were next. But we just really felt at the start that it just wasn't possible for us to do everything at once. And we needed to slice the elephant a bit and decide, what's important first. And for us, it was getting the kids settled, getting the paperwork done right, having one parent available on tap, on call to go all in, and have the other working on the career element and ensuring that we were provided for in a clear way. So everybody's journey is going to be different. And if you're a family moving over, you probably need to sit down from the beginning and decide what are our own roles here? What can we do in-house? What do we need to outsource? I think it's perfectly acceptable to look at it like that, because it's difficult to do everything at once, particularly if one of you or both of you are working. You need to be smart about how you're going to manage your time or you're going to burn yourself out. If you're coming as an individual and you're working in Spain, you may also think about, God, I can't do everything. What services can I outsource? And you may then start to think about a relocation consultant to support you, or private health insurance, because you want to be able to have that peace of mind that if you're sick, you go to the local private health centre and you get everything that you need there. Also, if you're moving as a couple, you may want to sit down and have that discussion in terms of what does our next 6 months look like? Who's adapting to, or who's taking on what roles? What can we do in-house? What are we going to outsource? And what do we want our life to look like over the next few months? These are really important discussions to have up front, because language shaming is a thing. But here's the thing, we language shame ourselves more than anyone else. It's the pressure we put on ourselves to be fully fluent, to go from 0 to 100 in terms of total immersion. That comes from us. Nobody out there expects us to move to a new country and within a matter of weeks experience complete fluency or full immersion. Nobody. And in my 9 years now living on the Costa del Sol, I have never experienced that. Expectations are realistic, and it's important that you apply the same realistic expectations to yourself. So living in Spain without speaking Spanish is absolutely possible, but only if you put the right supports in place. Health insurance, schools, a gestor, a relocation coach, and build a community. These 5 things are what make the big difference between feeling lost and truly settling in. So please don't let the language barrier hold you back. If you've been listening today and starting to picture your own move, why not take the first step and book a clarity call with us at WL Costa Properties? We'll listen to your plans, we'll answer your questions, and we'll help you see what's really possible for you here on the Costa del Sol. We would love to guide you, just like we've guided hundreds of others. And if you'd like more inspiration, you'll find us on all social media channels. We're sharing real stories and tips to help you make your move with confidence.